go over a few items. If you like what you're hearing today, please check us out on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can sign up for our news and updates on our website, DMFI PAC.org. If you want to ask a question, please submit it through the Q&A feature on your Zoom interface, or you can list it as a comment if you're streaming along on one of the social platforms. Now I'm very pleased to turn it over to our DMFI PAC manager, Augusta Christensen. Augusta?
Thanks, Joel, and thanks to everyone for joining. We have a really exciting program for everyone today. We have three of our victorious candidates. They're part of the freshman class of the 119th Congress, and they are all really extraordinary candidates who had tough primaries and came through victorious. And the last person you'll hear from today, who is Janelle Bynum, she actually flipped a seat from red to blue in the general as well. So we'll start off first with Yassamin Ansari, the Congresswoman-elect for Arizona 3. With DMFI PAC's help, former Phoenix City Council member and Vice Mayor Yassamin Ansari secured her seat in Congress after a razor-thin primary victory over an anti-Israel opponent. I'm sure when she speaks, she can tell you the exact number of votes. It was double digits. A staunch advocate for pragmatic and inclusive policies, and the first Iranian American elected to Congress from Arizona, Ms. Ansari's election underscores her commitment to strengthening bipartisan cooperation on key domestic and international issues. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Representative-elect Yassamin Ansari.
Thank you so much, Augusta. Thank you to DMFI for hosting this. I am Yassamin Ansari, and I'm proudly the Congresswoman-elect from Arizona's 3rd District. And for those who don't know, that's predominantly Phoenix, Arizona, and it's the seat that Congressman Gallego currently holds before he moves on to the U.S. Senate. First of all, I really want to thank DMFI. You all played such a crucial role in my election, and from, I think, the early days of meeting with Augusta before I even announced the run, until, you know, the bitter end through the recount and beyond, you were a huge help. So I really, really want to say thank you. And it was 39 votes that we won our primary election by, you know, and I think overall was considered the underdog in the race. So really, really proud to have outworked, and I think had a stronger message that helped us. But wanted to firstly just introduce myself. I know I haven't met many of the attendees on the call. So big picture, again, I'm Yassamin Ansari. I am the proud daughter of immigrants who came to the country when they were teenagers, fled the revolution in Iran. I grew up here in Arizona and got my start in politics as an organizer in high school for Barack Obama's first presidential campaign. I later studied international relations and international security studies at Stanford and Cambridge, and then began my career and worked on climate policy for about 7 years before I decided to run for public office. I specifically worked on the Paris Climate Agreement and a number of global climate summits. So I did a lot of work with cities, states, companies to push them towards clean energy transition. I ran for the Phoenix City Council as a response to the first Trump administration. You know, like many, felt very, you know, at a loss of what to do, and wanted to really shift my focus from global to domestic politics. And so I ran in my hometown, ran for the Phoenix City Council, and was elected in 2021. During my term, I focused heavily on the issues that I hope to continue working on in Congress, from climate and clean energy and transportation in particular, to housing affordability and addressing homelessness, to reproductive freedom. So I had a strong track record on these issues. I came to office during the pandemic, and so was responsible for allocating about $400 million in American Rescue Plan funding towards our most vulnerable communities. And in 2023, I served as the vice mayor of the city of Phoenix, and really got to dive into some of the economic development work of the city, from the job creation that's coming through thanks to CHIPS Act funding and TSMC coming to Phoenix, to much of the work that we are doing here in my district to make the city more sustainable and more equitable. Had again, a very competitive congressional race, and I was excited to run. I was compelled to run, given the issues that are at hand in our country. And I really think that my experience, both at the international level and also the very local level, makes me a good fit for Congress, and I bring unique expertise to the table. So I'm looking forward to serving right now. I'm sure you'll hear from my colleagues. We're going through our transition process. We just got through 2 weeks of new member orientation and applying for committees. I'm really hoping to serve on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, as well as the Education and Workforce Committees, to really move forward some of these priorities. It's going to be an interesting time in Congress, but I'm very committed to doing whatever I can to deliver for my district. I think something that I'm really mindful of is that my district will be at the forefront of the immigration conversation. And, if Trump carries out mass deportations and in the scale that he says he will, it will highly impact my constituents. There are a lot of mixed status families, so just something to be aware of that I'm thinking about and focused on, and working with our local legal community to figure out how we will respond, and building out our team, and looking forward to working with my colleagues. I was proud to be elected as our freshman class president during new member orientation. So also on top of my work for the district, we'll be working to really bring our class together and make sure we are unified and each member is being supported in the ways that they need to make sure we're successful in the next 2 years during our first terms. So I'll keep it there, but thank you again, DMFI, and thank you to everyone. I look forward to connecting with you all individually at some point too. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Congresswoman-elect, for that. Great to hear from you. Thank you so much again for joining us. Moving to our second speaker, this summer, Wesley Bell triumphed in his primary race against one of the most vocal anti-Israel squad members in Congress, solidifying his reputation as a forward-thinking leader at the national level. In addition to an endorsement and much support from our grassroots, DMFI PAC was proud to support his campaign with an independent expenditure. As a former prosecutor and community advocate, Mr. Bell has an impressive record on criminal justice reform and public safety, and will be an invaluable asset to the 119th Congress. Congressman-elect Bell, the floor is yours.
Congressman Bell, you're on mute currently.
Excited to be here. Thank you for everyone who is here in attendance by Zoom. Also really excited about our entire class, particularly the two my two colleagues, Yassamin and Congresswoman-elect Bynum, who are on the phone. I've got who are on this call as well. I've gotten a chance to get to know them and become fans of theirs very quickly, and look forward to working with them, as well as an amazing class that we've gotten the chance to get to know during our orientation and this transition. So really excited. And so again, my name is Wesley Bell. There was a conversation offline about college football, and I didn't get to get involved in that because I was having trouble getting on. But I do want to point out that I'm wearing my Mizzou gear, and also with the DMFI ads that ran, I was wearing this on one of them, so I figured I'd also wear it as kind of a victory lap as well. But a little bit about myself for those who don't know. I am still currently the St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney, or DA. I will be in this role for exactly 1 more month. So bittersweet. I'm leaving a bunch of great men and women in our office that I've been so proud to work with and stand with, who have done so much with criminal justice reform and public safety. But there's a lot more sweet, because obviously this is the privilege of a lifetime to serve Missouri's 1st district in Congress. And although we didn't flip a seat red to blue, I do believe that we flipped a seat. I think we flipped the seat from division to a vision, from disinformation to forward practical thinking. And so I'm really proud of everyone who contributed to that. And obviously DMFI was at the forefront of that. My first foray into politics was as a city councilman in a small city you may have heard of, Ferguson, Missouri. And I was a part of creating and writing the consent decree, working with President Obama's Department of Justice, bringing body cameras, community or police reform, and so many things to that city. And if you remember Ferguson in 2015 to where it is now, it is not on the front page of our newspaper. It's not on CNN every day as it was, and that's because of a lot of hard work. And I'm proud to have been a part of that as well. I've served as a municipal court judge. I've served as a municipal court prosecutor prior to being elected DA. I worked as the chair for the criminal justice program in a local college here in St. Louis. And so I do bring those experiences to bear in this position, and look forward to those experiences helping inform some of the legislative priorities that I look forward to working with and hopefully getting past. Regional growth in our region is a big issue. This St. Louis region has literally been dying a slow death. We've been losing population in the city as well as the county, both of which are in my congressional district. We have healthcare deserts, food deserts, and those are things that we have to address if our region is going to turn around and grow. As a prosecutor, obviously public safety is a big deal, but we want to see equity in our public safety. We want to see common sense. And so we've been very proactive in talking about our diversion programming that we brought to St. Louis County, where over 5,000 people we've been able to divert from penitentiaries and prisons into treatment and programs that help them turn their lives around with not only substance use disorder, mental health treatment, but also finding jobs, getting housing, and things that actually correlate with successful outcomes when we're talking about addiction and mental health issues. And so really proud of that work. That's work that we'd like to see continued on a national scale. And with respect to DMFI, I want to talk about two quick things that I found to be just invaluable. Not only the support, and that was big to know that we had supporters out there. And for everyone who supported our campaign, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, but particularly DMFI and that work that they did. This is politics, and it's important. And, it's important that we're able to put our message out there. But then there's some things that, you need your friends to be able to talk about it. And DMFI did that for us. And it really was beneficial with our campaign, but also just the partnership and knowing that we had partners out there, because it's tough to unseat an incumbent. I think incumbents win at 94+% of the time. And so we knew that and what our data showed us is if we got our message out, we'd win them. And that's how it played out. And the work from the folks on this call, DMFI and all the supporters, were a huge part of us being able to get that message out and thereby winning this election. So thank you. Again, looking forward to working with you all going forward, really excited about my colleagues in the 119th Congress and the two on this phone, on this Zoom as well. So thank you. And yeah, here we go.
Thank you so much, Congressman-elect. Our final speaker that we have today is Oregon Representative Janelle Bynum, who made history this November when she flipped a red district blue to become Oregon's first Black member of Congress. Her primary win over a far-left anti-Israel candidate with DMFI PAC's help highlighted her broad appeal and vision for a more inclusive and equitable future, a vision we can't wait to see in Congress. Representative-elect Bynum, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Augusta, and thank you to my new colleagues as well. I am so excited to be here today. It's been quite the whirlwind since November 5th, but this was the outcome that we were really hoping for. So good afternoon or good afternoon to everyone. I am, by way of introduction here, Janelle Bynum. I still currently serve as the state representative from House District 39, which is also included in Congressional District 5, and I'll stay that way until just about a month from now, just like Mr. Bell. And I am a mom of 4, Christine, Ellis, Caroline, and Asa, and my work in politics over the last 8 years as a state representative and going forward has been a love letter to Oregon's children and to America's children. I am also trained as an electrical engineer. I worked on electro-hydraulic power steering in the hybrid vehicle space before that was even sexy. I'm also a local business owner with my husband. We have 4 restaurants. And again, I've served as the state representative from this area for the last 8 years, so 4 terms. I was really excited to run and win because I was really hoping to make an impact on the lives of the next generation. And where DMFI was really instrumental in that was helping me tell my story and to provide an avenue for us to talk about the truth, for us to not engage in erasure, for us to talk about what it means to support democracy and a free America. The issues that were really important in my district were the environment. We suffer heavily from wildfires. I just got a phone call today about, hey, who's your advisor on the environment? Like, we have to talk about this. They also wanted to talk about the economy. What's really important to me is making sure that our young people have something to look forward to once they graduate from high school. So I'm the daughter of my mom actually graduated from one of the last segregated high schools in this country. It was not that long ago that opportunities were limited for a certain group of people. And so 1970, she graduated valedictorian of her class. But the way she learned her Social Security number was by going door to door downtown looking for a job. And my thought, as I've talked to a lot of people around my district and around the country, they care about their kids, they care about their grandkids, they wanted a brighter future. And that is what a large part of my campaign has been about. The other thing that was really important was healthcare and being able to access the healthcare you need when you need it at a price that is affordable. A lot of kids we're seeing today are having struggles with mental health care, actually across the spectrum, the age spectrum. That was an issue that was very important, as well as reproductive health care. Oregon is a leader in making sure that all the reproductive health care options are available to women, and they've been unwavering in that. The most important thing I hope to leave with you today is you're getting a freshman class that is really focused on education, focused on understanding how we can be more progressive in our thoughts in terms of reaching across the aisle, getting the work done of the people, and not just, wiping our hands saying we can't do anything. And so there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of enthusiasm, and there's a lot of interest in telling each other's stories. So I am really excited to get on the move. I'm excited to take a trip to Israel. And my door, I want to say, is always open. I am a listener, I am a learner, and I just want to make sure that DMFI knows how much I really appreciate all that was done for this campaign and to move democracy forward in this country and around the world. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative-elect Bynum. For folks who are joining us, as I said earlier on, you can ask questions using the Q&A feature on the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're following along one of the streaming platforms, you can comment in that platform as well. The first question that I have for each of you, and we'll start with Rep-elect Bell. we talked about what drove you to run for Congress, but we'd love to kind of know, what inspired your commitment to the U.S.-Israel relationship? Kind of what was that first connection built on? And you're on mute right now. Sorry, just a quick reminder. It happens to us all.
At some point, I'm going to get this down. For me, and I've said this before publicly and privately, I'm a political science major. I try to stay abreast of not only world events but world history. So I already understood the facts going into the Israel trip that I had the opportunity to take in 2017. But if anything, that trip crystallized things for me. To be able to see it in person, it was no longer just a narrative I was reading about in different books or things that were happening to people on the other side of the world. One thing that I do like to talk about, that I think is important to talk about, is I was there when former president, soon to be President Trump, announced that he was moving the embassy. So there was protests and things of that nature when I was there. So we actually had to cancel part of our trip into Jerusalem because there were protests there. And when we were at the kibbutz, 45 minutes after we left, the rocket sirens went off. And had we still been there, we would have been scrambling into the bomb shelters. And so, as I've said, I didn't need the trip to know that it was important for us to not only stand with our democratic allies, but also Israel specifically. I didn't need the trip to know the history of anti-Semitic, this anti-Semitism that we've seen throughout history. I was already aware of that. But the trip crystallized those things when you can see them in real time, when it's not impacting someone on the other side of the world, it's impacting me. So I've said this before as well. The Iron Dome, which my predecessor voted against funding for, potentially saved my life because those rockets fired while I was in Israel. And so when I think about folks who live there every day, they have families and just want what all of us want for our families. I think that it's important for me to be clear and in no uncertain terms, let folks know exactly where I stand. And so that's why, for me, before I announced that I was running, before I was even thinking about getting in the congressional race, I was very public about my position because I think that it's important that your friends, and we have a very large Jewish population in St. Louis, but I thought it was important that my friends know exactly where I stood and that I stood with them. And that's exactly what they can expect from me as a member of Congress.
Thank you. Rep Elect Bynum, same question.
I would say my journey actually began, I was invited to a home meeting, and I didn't grow up around a lot of Jewish people. And so my education ramp has been pretty fast and hard. And I've always felt that when you can commune and convene with a group and understand their perspective on their terms, not necessarily what someone else has told you, that is when true change and true education takes place. And so I think that actually was right before the pandemic. So being invited to a home meeting, that was pretty instrumental. And then we voted on a couple of items in the Oregon State Legislature promoting education. And I think that is actually very important to have education within our schools about, how we talk about world events and how we see things through lenses. And now fast forward to this election, having staff members who are Jewish has been very important, being very, very open to perspective. And one of them was in particular pretty influential in talking about his time there. I don't know exactly what the experience was called, but he lived there for 2 years. And him telling me that he felt like he was at home in Israel. And I understood as a Black American what that felt like, to feel safe, for him to talk about being in a place that he didn't feel targeted, he didn't feel excluded. And so I think for me, it has been a journey, and it continues to be a journey. And the more that you do the outreach, the more that we have these conversations and talk about things, the more the American public can understand that where someone is unsafe even around the world, that means you and your children are also unsafe. And so we seek this community safety and community peace for all of us.
Thank you. I think, that personal connection is something that a lot of us talk about. And, those shared values that you share with those staff members and they shared with you were really impactful. Rep Elect Bell, you alluded some to the rise in anti-Semitism when you were commenting on kind of this connection. And one of the things that we were getting some questions on from folks is kind of what role do you think Congress, the 119 Congress, can play in addressing the rising anti-Semitism in the U.S.?
First and foremost, I do want to do a quick shout out because I see him on this call. Mark Melman, I want to thank you, if you're listening personally, for the work that you've done and with respect to our campaign. So I got to make sure I shout you out. I hope you're listening. Joel, I don't even know if I would call it a rise. I think it's this cyclical, ugly cycle that we see that comes around, and this hate that springs its head up. And we've seen this historically. I remember reading about, and forgive me if I'm not articulating it as well, because it's been a while since I read about it. But even during the plague, the Valentine's Day massacre, where people accused Jewish people of starting the plague. We've seen histories of authoritarians losing power, so they blame their Jewish population because it's an easy scapegoat. And then I don't even think we have to talk about what happened in Nazi Germany. And so I think this is from a lack of, I think it's also oftentimes out of ignorance. I think it's out of a lack of information, and this misinformation that we're seeing now more so. We see so many young people who just do not have a grasp of history. Not all. There's some young folks on here, I'm not saying all, but we do see some who don't understand history and then are finding information on TikTok and believing that they know the facts, as opposed to this misinformation that we're seeing out there. So what I've said from the beginning is that it's important for us to double down on getting that real information out, because this, I do believe we're going to win this hate that we're seeing that's spewing more recently, but it's going to come back. And I think it's important that we are breaking bread together, getting to know one another. I think for African Americans, it's important that our friends come and learn about our culture, come to the African American Museum. Let's get to know one another. And I think it's important for us to come and learn about our Jewish brothers and sisters as well, so that when that hate pops its ugly head up, that we are not caught on the back foot, and that we're being proactive and forward-leaning, and ready to not concede these circles of ignorance, but on the other hand, being proactive in making certain that folks are educated and understand the history, and being able to put these things in context. But it's something that we're going to have to continue to work on. It's going to be something that we're going to have to continue to partner with and stand together in shoulder to shoulder. And I'll close on this question with this. I had the opportunity to visit the Pettus Bridge. I know about Dr. Martin Luther King and John Lewis risking their lives for civil rights. But I also know about Jewish rabbis armed and locked in arms with them, risking their lives. I know about the Freedom Riders who not only bled but lost their lives for our civil rights. And so I think it's important that we all stand together. And when one of us is suffering an injustice, we all are. And I'm very proud to stand with my Jewish brothers and sisters, my friends.
Thank you, Rep Elect Bell. Pivoting slightly, Rep Elect Bynum, you mentioned that you're an engineer by training. And are there any particular initiatives that you plan to promote or support in terms of economic and technological collaboration between the U.S. and Israel, given your background and experience as an engineer?
Well, there is an interesting nexus with Intel, which is housed here in Oregon, as well as their work in Israel. So I'm quite curious about that connection. I am a strong believer in exchange programs. When I first was a young engineer, I worked in our Paris, France. I worked for General Motors, and I worked in our Paris, France Technical Center. I worked in Luxembourg. I worked along the border in the Maquias in Mexico. And then actually on September 11th, I was in Taiwan. And what's really interesting I've found is that different work styles, different ways of thinking, engineers are generally aligned to coordinate and collaborate together to find new technologies and solutions. So it's a really interesting way for me to approach politics, never concerned about who gets the credit. You're just concerned about moving the ball. And so I think from a national defense perspective, one of the reasons that I was supportive of the CHIPS Act nationally, as well as being the chief co-sponsor of the CHIPS Act here in Oregon, was that it was firmly a part of our national defense. And then I can also talk about the development of our next generation of STEM engineers and young people who are interested in moving the ball forward from a technology standpoint. So CHIPS 2.0, count me in. And one of the things we're working on actually here in Oregon is clean tech and clean energy manufacturing. And I think that will take the United States a long way, and a partnership with Israel would be very interesting to pursue in that realm.
Thank you. Rep Elect Bell, you mentioned a lot of the work you've done around criminal justice reform as a prosecutor. During the first Trump administration, criminal justice reform was one of the bipartisan efforts that he was able to accomplish. Looking at this Republican trifecta that's coming in, what opportunities do you see to expand that cooperation on a particularly important issue like criminal justice reform?
I think on the surface or the outside looking in, and I'm checking because I felt like I was on mute. On the surface, on the outside looking in, yes, there are majorities in the House and Senate, but they're very slim margins. And I say that because whether Dems would have taken the House or Republicans would have held on is razor slim. And so I think that's a clear message from the American people that they want us to work together. They want us to get things done. And I think that there are some things that we're going to disagree on, but I think there's a lot of issues that are bipartisan in nature and spirit for that matter. And I think public safety is one of them. I've talked, obviously I've talked to Democrats and even some Republicans, and everyone wants the same things. They want to be safe. They want to be treated fairly, quite frankly. And so we recognize that we cannot prosecute our way out of substance use disorder. We can't prosecute our way out of mental health. And when we take those low-level nonviolent offenders and address the root causes, they are significantly less likely to graduate to the more serious crimes. And that's something that Democrats and Republicans can get behind. We recognize that serious and violent offenders have to be held accountable. Democrats and Republicans also share that belief. But there's a lot of folks who just need help. They haven't harmed anyone other than themselves. They're suffering with a disease. And what we created, our diversion advisory committee, which was the first of its kind in the country for that matter, was directly connecting our not only our health providers, not only our mental health providers, but also housing and jobs, so that when we had an individual that needed help, that maybe was teetering on whether they should be imprisoned or whether they should get out, we were able to give the court options by saying, hey, we have an outpatient treatment program ready to take them. We have a job program ready to take them. We have a mental health program that is ready to take these individuals. And that's why we were able to reduce our jail population at one point by close to 30%. So I do think there's some opportunities. Law enforcement has been supportive of this, and that took work too. We had to show them what we were doing, but now they are on aligned with us in this, and I think it's just the right thing to do. And I don't think it's a Republican or Democratic issue. I think it's an American. I think it's just the right thing to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Rep Elect Bynum, you mentioned, that you're a small business owner. It's been a big part of your profile. And no, I'm not going to ask if you were to hire Donald Trump at your McDonald's. Actually, what I was going to ask, is small businesses, are, as is often said by folks on both sides of the aisle, are the backbone of our economy. But kind of how do you directly think that experience as a small business owner is going to impact the way you're going to address the challenges you might face in this next Congress?
Well, so there's a lot of issues there. I'll start with working capital. So we know, I know, as a small business owner, the number one thing that you need is capital. You need to be able to have money when you need it to make your payroll. And sometimes your money comes in like all in December. So for us, this is the time where we make most of our money. In January, we might lose money, right? And so having that understanding of how companies' cash flow works is important, how people start up their businesses. And we know that minority communities typically don't have the capital to sustain a large on-time or a large on-ramp for starting their businesses. So that's a challenge. The other issue is workforce. And so I'm particularly concerned with how the president-elect is, planning to go about with his labor secretary pick, but also what he's doing about immigration. We should have a fair immigration process, a predictable immigration process. We should reduce the backlog of the number of people who have applied for asylum or who have properly applied for permission to stay in this country. Those are issues that actually affect small businesses, but they affect large businesses as well. So when you have certainty with your capital and when you have certainty with a strong labor force, those are things I think that'll move the country forward. The last point that I want to make again is that we absolutely have to make sure that our young people have something to look forward to. And what that means is jobs in their own communities, housing that they can afford, and an education that provides them options. That's not a red issue. That's not a blue issue. That is an across-the-board issue that I've found that people really are concerned about. So that's how I'm going to approach things, and carrying that banner of the small business owner, I think is a very strong one and one that I'll be able to reach across the aisle with and get some big wins.
And Joel, do you mind if I
Absolutely.
add to that? Because I couldn't agree with Congresswoman-elect Bynum. I couldn't agree more. But also, I think it's important that we are open to having these conversations. There's some issues that should not be politicized. When we talk about public safety, when we talk about reproductive rights, when we talk about the border, those should not be political issues. Those should be issues that we sit down and come out with the best, and figure out the best resolution, the best way to deal with these situations that impact not only our districts, but the American people. To use an example with reproductive rights, once the Dobbs decision came down, Missouri, which is a supermajority Republican state legislature, passed some of the most harshest anti-choice laws in the country. They did not look to interact with reproductive rights advocates to say, well, let's work on this together and see if there's some common some commonality that we can come. It was just, we're going to ram this down your throat with the border. That's something that Democrats and Republicans alike believe that we need to address. And so if one side wants to say, hey, we just want everything we want, then nothing's going to get done because of the slim majorities that we see. But if we're going to sit down, take politics off the table, and be willing to be thoughtful and give some, get some, I think that we will be doing the work that our respective constituents sent us to do.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Rep Elect Bell. Before I go on to a couple more questions, I wanted to note for folks, because some folks have asked about it, Congresswoman-elect Ansari had to leave for another commitment, but she wanted me to make sure she sent along her regards and her appreciation. As I'm sure the other Rep Elects on the call can allude, the schedule gets very, very busy very quickly. So yes, but well, I want to kind of turn back to kind of your campaigns some. Rep Elect Bynum, kind of what role did Israel issues or issues related to Israel come up at all during your campaign, either in the primary or in the general election?
Sure, they came up a bit in the primary, but not as much as I would have expected. In the neighboring congressional district, it was a huge issue. But I think for me, because I remember I mentioned that I had been to that home meeting, had been an ally just consistently within my role as in the Oregon State Legislature, it wasn't a big hill to climb. What I think actually has become more important is that the messages of, if they come after them, rest assured they'll come after you. And I am my brother's keeper, right? So when we think about how we protect one another from harm and how we put ourselves in another person's shoes, that I think started to become a little more crystallized in this election. And one of the things that people really, really wanted, I would say nationwide, was a sense of authenticity. And that is what, the DMFI help afforded me the opportunity to do, was to tell my authentic message, to share the fact that I'm a mom, to share the fact that I'm very interested in making sure that social justice, my view of social justice is that economic justice is social justice. And so when people have options, when they have options to move around the world and they have options to move around the country, that to me is one of the greatest forms of freedom we could ever live up to. So that's how it manifests itself in my district.
Thank you. Rep Elect Bell, kind of, how often did you hear from voters in your primary election about Israel and the Middle East in terms of why they were supporting you or otherwise? And you're on mute currently, just as a reminder. I got your back. I was literally thinking, don't forget you're on mute. Don't forget you're on mute. And then as soon as you start talking, asking me a question, I just start talking. In our district, it was an issue, but I would share in Rep Bynum's sentiment. It wasn't as large as I anticipated. Quite frankly, this being a predominantly African-American district, a lot of folks, two things I think were at play. One is that because we also have a very large Jewish population, there are a lot of relationships that were already established for years. And so when this anti-Semitic when the messaging and protests were coming, there were a lot of folks that were like, nah, these are my friends. I'm not going to just turn my back on my friends and accept these narratives. And so a lot of folks, even if they weren't as knowledgeable about what was going on in the Middle East, were certainly more receptive to hearing the facts and not just going along with what some folks were saying, but in this district,
the biggest killer of young Black boys is gun violence. And so for a district that's predominantly African American, yes, what happens in the Middle East is important, but a lot of folks were worried about what was happening right here in our home district and with folks right in this district. So we were able to address those issues. As folks who follow my race knew, we didn't shy away from our positions on Israel and that we were supporting Israel, but we doubled down on the issues that also impact our folks right here at home. And we were able to be consistent with that messaging. And I think that it resonated with a lot of folks. So, there's some folks you just weren't going to reach. They were where they were. But the folks who are paying attention to what's going on in their district, it was easier for us to get them. And the folks who just didn't know, it helps when you have the facts. It helps when you have support of our fellow brothers and sisters on your side. And that's something that we did. We could go into any town hall, we could go into any event, and we could debate any issue. My opponent didn't want to debate, as many of you knew, because she had positions that were indefensible. And so we had the facts on our side, and we pushed those facts.
Great. Thank you so much. We're going to have one more question before I turn it over to our chairman, Mark Melman, to close out the call. As you both alluded to, you both were in DC for your freshman orientation a couple of weeks ago. I guess this last question is a little bit, what was the most surprising friendship that you formed during your freshman orientation? Start with you, Rep Elect Bell.
Ladies first.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get time to think about it.
No, I met a gentleman. He's currently the North Carolina Speaker of the House, Tim. Wish I could remember his last name. But it was an interesting relationship to have formed. He's a Republican. He shared with me that he won a large, portion of the Black vote because he, I think, was an attorney for their churches. And so it was an interesting position. Now, I can't say that I agree with everything that North Carolina has done under his leadership. Let me just say that. But it was interesting that we could talk as two people. I'm a Christian. Grew up Baptist. We could talk as two people of faith about what humanity looks like going forward. And I have always tried to just meet people where they are, try to not judge. And it was always very pleasant seeing him and his partner. And I'm looking forward to him pushing me and me pushing him so that we can move the ball. So I'm a cautious fangirl of Tim.
Hopefully that gave you time, Rep Elect Bell.
It did. For me, it was, I'm going to answer this in two quick parts. Getting to know so many of my colleagues and their stories was just fascinating to me. I knew a little bit about Rep Bynum, for example, but getting a chance to talk to her and hear her story and hear about establishing dominance, and so many other folks and how they got to where we were was just it just had me in awe, to be perfectly honest. I think one of the interactions that caught me off guard was not actually at orientation. We actually were at a Mizzou game the weekend before orientation. I went with some friends, and so we were hosted by the university. But what I didn't know is that other electeds were also invited as well. And so I got a chance to sit down with many in the Republican delegation, not sit down, but talk to them. Each one, the same sentiment was expressed. There's going to be some ideological things that we just disagree on, but the stuff that impacts this region, there's no reason why we can't work together. And although I was expecting it, because I've been able to, I know some of these folks through mutual acquaintances or what have you, to see the welcoming um, sentiment, I don't think I really was expecting. I was expecting to give it, but I wasn't expecting to receive it. But that's exactly how I was received, and yeah, we know once the once the action starts, there's going to be some things that we disagree with, but I think that when we're deliberate about not making it personal, and I think it helps us when we disagree on one issue. It's easier to turn around and work together on the other issue when we haven't attacked each other personally. And that's something that I've done or focused on my entire career, something that I'm going to take to DC. I think it's important for us to get things done. And the only way we get things done is by working together. And so there's things that you have to do in order to do that. And I think that's what we have to go up and be intentional about.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Rep-elect Bell and Rep-elect Bynum for joining us and taking the time to get to know let our supporters get to know you a little bit better and tell us more about what you're looking for in Congress. I am going to turn it over now to our DMFI PAC chairman, Mark Melman, to close out the call.
Thank you for the shout out, Representative-elect. I appreciate it very much. I heard the earlier one too, so thank you. But I am so excited about these new members of Congress. These are people who come from diverse backgrounds, who bring diverse perspectives, whether it's as a small business person, an engineer, a prosecutor, a policy analyst, all different kinds of backgrounds, all different kinds of perspectives, all of them dedicated to moving the priorities of the Democratic Party, to moving the priorities that should be the priorities for the entire country, all of them bright, energetic, willing to work across party lines. This is just a really exciting group of folks. I am delighted that DMFI PAC was able to play a role in helping each of them get elected. We are really excited about that, and I am deeply grateful to everyone on this call for helping us be in a position to help them get elected. We need to make sure they stay elected over the next 2 years and beyond. That's to come. But again, thank you, members-elect. Thank you, our supporters, without whom we would not be able to help such fantastic people like this get elected. We would not have these strong pro-Israel voices in Congress were it not for DMFI, were it not for you folks who are participating, working with DMFI. We're very grateful for your time. We're very grateful to have a relationship with you that will be ongoing, and very grateful again to our supporters for making it possible to impact our entire national politics through you. Thank you. Thanks very much.
All right, my pleasure.